Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Phil, and I'd like to thank you for signing up to this afternoon's webinar, focusing on the JCAD CORE Risk Management Solution. The webinar is going to be recorded, so if you can raise any questions at the end, that would be greatly appreciated. Before I start the demo, I've got a few slides just to give you a bit of background towards JCAD, the company, as well as the CORE application. So JCAD are a specialist developer of just risk, compliance and claims processing software. We've been around now for about 20 years, and of our 60 installations or so for risk and compliance, the majority of those are within the UK, but we also have some within Europe and the United States of America. On the screen in front of you, you can see some sample clients, and as you can tell, they're quite diverse. So the generic application that we have available for risk and compliance will fit many different kinds of organisations. So we have sort of large central government bodies such as the British Council, the OSCE, the Council of Europe, but also commercial entities such as Telefonica, academic institutions, housing associations, and also local government bodies as well, all making use of the CORE system successfully. Often when a client or a prospect comes to us, they're utilising either Excel or Word or a internally built database for managing their risks. Those solutions have a number of issues. First and foremost, they're often very difficult or impossible to audit. So you can't tell when people are deleting or reviewing risks or the amendments they've made to those risks or those controls. Because of that, they're hard to manage, which incorporates a lot of manual work in terms of producing the reports and managing the spreadsheets. Also, it's very difficult to engender participation because everyone's doing their own thing to different standards and different qualities, which again also means that there's no one standardized approach to managing risk and compliance. Therefore, it's very hard to compare performance across your organization. It's also very difficult in that respect to link those records to other records. Commonly, people want to be able to link, for instance, audit recommendations to risks and controls. With multiple databases or multiple spreadsheets, that's very difficult to accomplish. Also, from the perspective of an in-house built system, such as an Access database, once the resource that has developed that leaves the organization, the system very quickly becomes unsupported and therefore less useful. And it also often means the development remains static, by which I mean as new risk management thinking changes and new functions and new features are developed, they don't filter in or aren't part of that development process, whereas with something like JCAD, all those new functions are developed and put into new releases. So what our clients are usually trying to solve those issues that I just identified to produce some meaningful output for operationally managing risks and also for management to inform upon decision making within your organization. Here are some examples of the output that our clients have wanted in the past. This is a nice one because it shows that the thing in focus is the corporate ambition, the corporate objective, beneath which we can see all those risks that have an impact upon the delivery of that particular objective, who the risk owner is, the previous scores, as well as the target score. This is what we're trying to achieve, the direction of travel since it was last assessed, red being bad obviously and green being good, and then the associated metrics or KPIs, KRIs that are being used to support that particular risk. Another similar example is shown here. In this example, we're also capturing a milestone event. Here we have a dashboard. So again, this is a graphical representation of risk performance. This is quite a common approach to visualizing aggregated risks in a heat map. So you can see the number of risks in each of the particular cells. It's worth pointing out that the JCAD CORE system will handle any size of matrix, whether it's a 4x4, 5x5, etc. We can also see the numbers of risks that are red, amber and green, and then to the right hand corner a nice little one is showing the actions that are overdue by particular owners. This one is far more complex, highlighting a number of facets within the system. So the objective, the owner, the department it sits within, the risk information, both the reference and the description, the uncontrolled or the inherent assessment, the current or the residual assessment after controls have been put in place, the owner of that particular risk when it's next due for review, as well as all the controls that are being used to mitigate that risk. And again, there's a range of additional information that has been collected here as well. Any field that's captured within the core system can be used either within some of the grid views, which I'll show you in a moment, or used within these reports that are produced using SAP Crystal reports. So what we're going to see in this demo is a very simple risk register view. We may look at the ease of review, look at some qualitative risk aggregation based upon particular categories or ownership, some hierarchies, both organizational and objectives, some key risk indicators, and then a number of reporting methods. So when you first log into the system, it being web-based, you type in a URL and it will take you to the alerts window. Here I can see that I, for Walden, have 27 reviews assigned to me, of which 3 are overdue. It gives me the reference, the description, and how many days overdue it is as well. I can also see I have some controls, and some of those are also overdue. To the right, I have our document store, which contains guidance advice, which can be Excel spreadsheets or Word documents or PDFs, of anything that you think is useful to your end users to access during the process of using the system or managing or their risks using your own particular framework. Some managers or directors don't actually own risks, but their subordinates do. So they may want to log into their area and see all the risks within that area. So here there are 13 risks in that area, of which 5 are overdue, and again we can see each of the people that have risks outstanding. From a central risk management perspective, we may want to look at all records across the entire organization. Now we can see there are 90, of which 49 are overdue, and again we can see each of those users or owners of risk within the organization, and again who or who is not doing what they should be doing within the system pertaining to risk management. So a very easy way of getting an overview of that kind of exception reporting. Another useful area is the risk register view, which is a hierarchical view of your organizational reporting structure. This is usually provided to us as part of the implementation which we then embed within a database. Going forward, it's very easy for the client to change these themselves. So here we have a register for our finance department. This is for our HR department, our IT department, our security department. So each still has their own registers, but by virtue of being able to show the descendant records, we can roll up the information and aggregate it to a higher level. So if we click on the areas folder, we can see this is the single risk that's been managed at that level, but all these folders sit beneath it. So by clicking on show descendant records, we can now see everything that falls beneath it within that structure. So there are now 41 items. The end users can also filter the data at this point, or nest the data, I should say, at this point. So perhaps we want to filter by category, and we can now look at just those risks that are currently operational or reputational in nature. The views that are on display here are created by the administrator or power users. With a bit of forethought, these can be very powerful analytical views for the end users. So for instance, perhaps you wish to look at just those risks that are currently assessed as red. The data will then filter to that particular view. Or perhaps you want to look at those risks that have been created within the last 6 months. And again, it will change the fields and show you that information. Any of these views can be popped into Excel for additional analysis. We go back to our finance department and we'll look at one particular risk. So this relates to a major financial shortfall as described here in our risk description. The other fields that are on display, so the section, so where it sits within our hierarchy, the categorization of risk, all these terms can or will be changed to fit the framework, the terminology in place at the client, as will the categorizations. These are just examples, so whatever you use will be shown within the database. We're also able to capture or link a risk to our corporate ambitions, our corporate goals. So this particular risk of a major financial shortfall has been linked to our revenue growth objective. We can also see the cause and effect of that particular risk, and we're also capturing the ownership, how often it's going to be reviewed, the status, so whether it's open or withdrawn, for example, or maybe it's the 4 T's, treat, tolerate, terminate, etc. Again, however your organization currently captures the status of risk will be seen here. We're showing 2 assessments, the uncontrolled, the inherent, and the current. And again, the terms that are used here and the color scheme that's used is entirely client configurable. Next door, we have our control view. So this lists all the controls or actions that are being used to mitigate that particular risk. So here we can see that this particular risk has been mitigated by a regular review with heads of service. An action has also been established pertaining to that particular control. And again, we can see that action about better BI reporting needs to be maintained. So what you're doing is basically building an entire view of the risk, the controls, and the actions associated with that mitigation. I mentioned auditing previously. Any changes made to the risk or the control are captured within the audit tab, the date that it was changed, the field, values, and also who made that change. The history tab is similar to the audit, but it just shows amendments and changes to the current assessment, so in essence a trend. So we can, here we can see all the assessments for this particular risk, where it's arrow pointing down, the assessment is improved, and obviously red is the opposite of that. And we also have the comment section, so during the review process, the system will ask a user to put in some commentary associated with that assessment change, and that is then captured alongside the assessment change. So you can see what people are doing, and they can evidence why it is they've changed an assessment. The next tab relates to key risk indicators. So in this example, our major financial shortfall has been allocated, or there is a KRI being allocated to it to help with monitoring its performance. In this example, it's revenue shortfalls. So these are being captured on a monthly basis, but this is shown on an annual aggregated basis. So we can see we're currently in the middle of our amber tolerance line. And then finally, we have our related links tab, which allows you to look at the links between this risk and other records within the system. So it's been linked to 2 other risks, either in a peer-to-peer or a parent-child basis, and it's also been linked to a recommendation that is part of an audit. If we quickly click on this link, it will then go into our audit register. So the name's changed from our operational register to our audit register, and the color scheme has changed. And you'll notice that the field descriptions are also altered, as have the fields that are being captured. So this view now relates not to risks and controls, but to audit reports and their associated recommendations and actions that underpin that particular audit report. And again, we can see that this particular report is linked back to our risk of a major financial shortfall. So again, by being able to link the records to each other, it gives you a more holistic overview of risk and control and audit performance, or in fact any other compliance that you may choose to show within the system. So we've seen the the organizational hierarchy, we can also look at our corporate themes. So if we go to that particular area, we can see that these are all the risks that, although they're being managed by different people in different departments, all have a bearing on the achievement of our revenue growth objective. So it allows you to slice the information in a different way, not by looking at the ownership of particular risks or where they sit in the organizational structure or particular project, but we can now see it by the corporate ambition, the corporate objective instead. The two or three other areas for reporting, we've already seen the views that can be created. We also have the dashboard view. So the dashboard view is an interactive area where the administrator has chosen a number of graphical views that the end user can click on and drill down into. Again, if we focus on our heat map here, we're looking at a 4x4 heat map for all our finance risks. We can filter by different common fields, so corporate goals, categories, owner, etc. If we make this live by clicking on the graph itself, we can then see all the underlying risks that sit within those cells. And by clicking on one specific cell, we can highlight that risk and then move directly to it. And all those graphs work in exactly the same way, so you can drill down into them, to the underlying data. And then finally, we have our reports area, which is where the SAP Crystal reports have been made available. We provide 35 reports as standard, which can be seen on our website. Any of those can be utilized by yourselves, although some of them will be needing to be tweaked to fit with a framework that's in place. But as an example, we click on our corporate register. The end user is able to give it a new title, decide what format they wish to see it in, filter the data that's returned, so perhaps we'll just filter it by our finance department, and then we'll run that report. So here we can see the risk reference, the business unit, the current rating, 2 categories of risk have been captured in this report, alongside the description, the cause, and the effect of that particular risk. As I mentioned before, any field that's captured within the system can be used within a grid view or can be used in one of these reports, either in a tabular or graphical fashion, as shown within the initial slide deck. Thank you very much for your time. If you have further questions or queries, then please get in contact with us on that website. Or alternatively, you can give us a call on 01730 712 027. That'll come through to myself, and we can address your questions and issues. Thank you very much.